everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And we are here tonight to do a quick update on the Tatiana Jefferson case. And if you guys remember, she is the young woman that was killed by a former, well, at the time he was a Fort Worth police officer, but he's no longer with the force because they were going to fire him and he decided to resign before they fired him. And so her wake was supposed to be tonight, and then there was supposed to be a funeral tomorrow at 2 p.m. But news came out earlier today that had a judge had issued a restraining order on behalf of her father, stopping the funeral from taking place. And then there was a hearing that's set for Monday, but I'll give you a little more information on that in a few minutes. But it was reported yesterday that two professional athletes had stepped up to cover the cost of the funeral for Tatiana. And so former Dallas Mavericks player Harrison Barnes and his wife, Brittany Barnes, are covering more than half of the cost of the service. And Philadelphia Eagles player Malik Jackson is paying for the remainder, according to attorney Lee Merritt, who is representing the Jefferson family. So this story comes from the Dallas News, and it goes on to say a representative for Barnes said he and his wife were paying about 90% of the cost. So Merritt said the athletes reached out to him about paying for the funeral and didn't want to make a big deal or big to-do about their generosity. And he said that they did it because they cared. And then in an interview with NBC Sports Bay Area, Barnes said that no one should ever be shot during a welfare check, and that the last thing a family in that situation should have to deal with is funeral costs. It's about the family. It's about everything they're going through. Our prayers are obviously with them. And Harrison Barnes on he and his wife's decision to pay for the funeral for Tatiana Jefferson. And so Jefferson's funeral, which is open to the public, will be at 2 p.m. Saturday at the Potter's house. Then it gives the address, and you guys know that that's Bishop T.D. Jakes Church. And it says Barnes was in the middle of his third season with the Mavericks when he was traded to the Sacramento Kings in the middle of a game in February. He and his wife had a history of charitable giving in the Dallas area, including paying for the renovation of the Mesquite Boys and Girls Club basketball court. Jackson, who previously played for the Denver Broncos and Jacksonville Jaguars, joined the Eagles this spring. And then the lawyer, Lee Merritt, also has an office in Philadelphia. And then a GoFundMe account organized by Merritt on behalf of Jefferson's family has raised nearly $250,000. And that may have a lot to do with why this father has, intervened and said that, he should be the one in charge of the funeral arrangements, that they're just cutting him out of the picture. And so this is an article that came out today, a few hours ago. And this was also from the Daily News. It says the father of Tatiana Jefferson, the black woman killed by a white Fort Worth officer last week, has gotten a temporary restraining order to put a stop to her funeral and burial. Dallas County Probate Court Judge Brenda Hull Thompson signed the order Friday afternoon. It grants Marquise Jefferson full authority to make arrangements for the funeral and burial. The order also sets a hearing Monday morning to determine whether the restraining order should be continued. Tatiana Jefferson's funeral, which is open to the public, guys told you it's going to be at the Potter's house. It says, in an apparent response to the order, attorney Lee Merritt, who is representing Jefferson's relatives, tweeted that the wake and funeral would proceed as planned. In his application for the restraining order, Marquise Jefferson said he was denied a role in making the arrangements by making the arrangements by, among others, his daughter's aunt, Benita Body. But Body's first name is actually Vanita, so I don't know what's going on. Obviously, some family tension there. And the application says that unless the court prevents Body and Golden Gate Funeral Home from going through with the funeral, he will, quote, suffer immediate and irreparable injury. At a news conference Monday, Body said that Marquise Jefferson was not Tatiana Jefferson's biological father and never had legal custody of her. So I don't know how that works out because she has his last name. So something's going on that she was named after him. And then it says Walter L. Irving, a lawyer representing Marquise Jefferson, told WFAA TV Channel 8 that his client provided a birth certificate naming him as the father and that legally the funeral planning falls to the father because Tatiana Jefferson did not have a will. So what do you guys think about that? I mean, like, this shows the importance of having a will and designating who you want to do what type of funeral you want, and all of that. And I'm sure at 28 years old, most people aren't thinking that they're going to be sitting in their home minding their own business and then a police officer is going to kill them for no reason. This has been a tragedy from the beginning, from the way she was murdered by this guy, all the way to now having all this drama going on about the funeral and laying her to rest. I don't even know. So, like, if the father is now coming forward and saying that, you know, he has the legal authority, how did they even plan the funeral without him? How did they even get the body released? Seemed like he would have been the one that would have signed off for the body to be released from the morgue or from the hospital, you know, wherever the body was in that case. So that's real interesting. But I just think when people die, it brings out the ugliness in people. And then when money is involved, it also brings out the ugliness. And so I'm thinking if they've raised almost $250,000 in a GoFundMe account, that GoFundMe account is probably going to be seized. And then they're going to have to go through probate court because she didn't have a will to determine who's the rightful person to get that money. And so who set up the GoFundMe account? Was it the Lee Merritt guy, or was it the aunt or the sister or somebody? So I think in the order of how things go, the father, if he can prove that he's legally or biologically her father, he would be the one first in line. And then, you know, it would go down to the sisters and that type of thing. The aunt, I think, would be last on the list if there's no will or anything leaving her as naming her as executor of the estate. So this has the potential to really get ugly, and it's just a sad situation because this young lady was killed in the manner that she was and didn't deserve to die this way, and definitely doesn't deserve to have her name dragged through the mud like this. And then there was another story that was from NBC News, and it says DA seeks murder charge against former Fort Worth officer who fatally shot Tatiana Jefferson. So, you know, when he was first arrested, that was the police pressing charges. And then the case goes to the state attorney, and then the state attorney can either uphold the police decision to file charges, or they can take it before a grand jury, or they can dismiss the charges altogether. And so the state attorney is saying that we will prosecute this case to the fullest extent of the law, Tarrant County Criminal District Attorney's Office said. It says prosecutors in Tarrant County, Texas said Friday they intend to ask a grand jury for a murder charge against the former Fort Worth police officer who fatally shot Tatiana Jefferson in her home. And it says, we have completed an internal review of the case And based on the evidence, we intend to ask the grand jury for an indictment of murder against Aaron Dean. We will prosecute this case to the fullest extent of the law. Then it goes on. Dean, who is white, fatally shot 28-year-old black woman through a bedroom window early Saturday. And it says the district attorney's office said Friday that to ensure a fair trial as the case proceeds, our statements will be limited to keeping with the rule of ethics for Texas attorneys. The agency said as sympathies and prayers remain with Jefferson's family and friends. And interim police chief Ed Krause said during a press conference earlier in the week that he intended to fire Dean, the 34-year-old resigned first. Had the officer not resigned, I would have fired him for violating several policies, including our use of force policy and de-escalation policy and unprofessional conduct. And so I talk about this, and I'm going to drop the link up here. You'll see a little gray bar, and it is my first video talking about this and going over exactly what happened. The guy who called the police, he's an older black man who has been catching a whole lot of hell from people who are saying that, why did he call the police? Why didn't he call her? Why didn't he go knock on the door? Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? Well, I'm sure through life we all can say we wish we had done things differently. He said that he never imagined that the police would show up and kill the young lady. And so, there's a call out to people stop blaming this man, because first, especially with black women, they want to yell, oh, men don't protect us, they never stand up for us, they never support us. And then when the black man, is concerned about his neighbor, calls the non-emergency police number and specifically says, I see her lights on, I see the door open, it's unusual, can you please do a wellness check? I'm not reporting a crime, I don't see anything suspicious, but can you go and check on her? 2 o'clock in the morning. And that still wasn't good enough for some people. And my thought process is, what if he had gotten up and went across the street, and she was licensed to carry, but maybe she was startled and she ends up shooting him, thinking he's a robber or something. Or what if another neighbor saw him crossing the street, going over to her house, looking around, trying to see if everything was okay, and they called the police, and then the police show up and shoot him. So it's a no-win situation in this case. And so for people to be blaming this poor man, he's going to have to live with this for the rest of his life, that because he was concerned about his neighbor, she ended up dead. So he really doesn't need the court of public opinion and social media, Monday morning quarterbacks, condemning him and putting him down for what, he decided to do. And then before I go, I'm going to drop a video here that came from a Fort Worth, I believe it was a city council meeting. And there was this young man that got up and spoke very eloquently, I might say. And he basically told the people what he was really thinking. And so I had meant to post this video the other day. So now that this has came out, and I said, let me stop what I'm doing and do this update video. And so I'll go ahead and drop that in. So go ahead and listen to that. Let me know what you think.
Good evening. It's a lot of places I'd rather be than be here. Jamal Johnson, 9000 Friendswood Drive, District 6. Mr. Jordan, I'm speaking to you. My fiance and I bought our first house in District 6 because we thought Fort Worth was where we wanted to be. Over this last year, sadly, we have lost faith in this city, its leadership, that's you guys, and especially the police. After the killing of Atatiana Jefferson, I'm ready to leave because no house is worth losing my life or the life of someone who I love. How can I raise a child in this city that is about to explode because of police brutality? The #1 threat on my life is gun violence. Am I supposed to ignore this? We have no faith in justice, as it has become obvious that America isn't for us and neither is Fort Worth. How can we hope for justice with the district attorney office led by a known racist when she is backed by the very same police lobby killing us, totally giving her a complete conflict of interest? preventing her objective pursuit of justice for Tay? How can we hope for justice when your very own ex-police chief accuses his former employee, the city of Fort Worth, of racism? Fort Worth, your streets are a mess, and it's spilling over into the halls. David Cook, that falls on you. You're supposed to manage this city. Is that not correct? The lack of leadership, that falls on you, Betsy Price. How can we feel safe if we die in our homes? Where are we safe? Maybe in a prison or a box, because that seems to be the only place you want us. How can we feel safe if we're being killed for flashlights? Chief Crouch, you haven't addressed that yet. You don't walk in our shoes. You're for the most part lily white and old. Young black, brown citizens are dying at epidemic rates. Wake up. Jurgis Jordan, you're my city council member. 14 years and you still sit at that same seat like a grand wizard. Betsy Price, your time is up. You have led this city into destruction. You want to spend money on consultants? We want independent citizen oversight. No more money to McKinsey and Deloitte. Also, your resignation for lack of leadership would be nice too. I would call for the FBI, but I have no faith in the federal government led by Trump and A.G. Barr. The system is rigged against us, and I am a walking target. Every day I pull out my driveway, and on my way to work, I fear that I will be killed. The status quo is comfortable for you guys, as you do not live this experience. You don't have guns pointed at you. You aren't being killed for living and breathing in your own home. Your arrogance and lack of compassion speaks volumes. You sit before us, not listening, inattentive, and frankly, disgusting. May you all reap what you sow in the upcoming elections. There is no such thing as a blue life. Every time I see you describe, you desecrate the American flag
Jamal,
and further
that's it.
entrenches
Your
the
time
belief
is up.
that you are against us. You have added to the division.
Jamal,
between
your
these
time
groups.
is up.
If you are a human being like the rest of us, and realize your badge does
Marshall.
not give us the right to take my black life. Close it.
Dominic
And
Jones.
you
The living room, the blinds were up. Anybody who walked by would have seen that I was home. At some point, my dog demanded to go out, and I let her back into the backyard and went back to watch my movie. About 5 minutes later, I heard her barking furiously, and I went into the kitchen, into the backyard, where I keep my back door open and my storm door shut. And as I walked to the patio, I saw 2 flashlights flitting across my backyard, in the dark, in the grass. And when I walked out to my patio, I had to yell out, "Who's back there?" And the answer that I got is, "It's the police." I am a white woman in a middle-class neighborhood, and the circumstances of my call, the police were called out to a barking dog, not a welfare call, a barking dog. But the police came onto my property. They started flitting around and creeping around stealthily. They did not come to my front door and announce themselves when anybody could have seen that someone was home. Instead, they flitted around and they were stealthy, and it wasn't until I cried out that they announced themselves as the police. I am alive, and Tay is not. And that's white privilege right there, because my biggest fear that night was, what if the police shot my dog? And I'm mortified to say that. But after that night, that was my feelings. What if they shot my dog? If I were a black woman in this city, my fear would be, what if they shot me? And that's the reality. I stand with you and I commend you for wanting to have a police oversight committee. What I ask of you is that you have a criminal defense attorney present on that committee. We watch body cams all day. We can tell you what's going on, and we can name names. Thank you.
Leave your comments below letting me know what you think about the whole restraining order. Should the father just stand back and let them continue with the funeral? Are they going to be defiant and proceed with the funeral despite the judge's order, which could lead to contempt of court, which could lead to him actually being able to take over her estate, the court's ruling in his favor. And so it's just a lot to deal with when it comes down to death, when it comes down to money being involved. We don't know if she had life insurance or anything. I don't know, appreciative of these athletes stepping in and saying that they'll cover the cost. But now, what does that do for them, that they're now caught up in this controversy? Like, do they withdraw their support, or do they just take their hands off it and say, whoever is planning the funeral, whatever's going on with the funeral, we're still going to pay for it? Let me know what you think. Leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.